Welcome, baseball fans, to the latest episode of the Highland Bullpen. The MLB season is getting down to the crunch time. So let's find out how the Mariners, the Red Sox, the White Sox, and the Tigers are looking as we approach the stretch in the baseball season. Well, first of all, as we've said before on this show, it's the hope that kills you. As a Mariners fan, I allowed myself to get carried away after we extended our lead in the division in the AL West to a remarkable 10 games not so long ago. But since then, the Mariners have fallen off a cliff. The team can't rack up runs. The pitching that somehow got them through that early part of the season is starting to fade a little bit. Injuries to star men, Julio Rodriguez and JP Crawford. How can it get any worse for the Mariners? Well, the one thing as a Mariners fan you soon realise is it can, and it probably will. But we've got some hope coming up because the Mariners have got a series that perhaps, just perhaps, they could actually come out on top in. It's been a long while since they've come out on top on a series. The Astros are perennial enemies from Texas, have overtaken the Mariners, and now the Texas Rangers are close to overtaking the Mariners as well. So it's vitally important that the Mariners somehow get back on track, somehow start finding some runs, and somehow start getting series wins on the board. And the next series is that opportunity. The Mariners are 2-8 in the last 10 games, the second worst recent form in baseball. But the worst recent run of form in baseball, spoiler alert, probably not needed, belongs to our friends from Chicago as well. And our friend who's a Chicago fan, but not from Chicago, Dave Jr., what's going to happen then? Is this like two bald men fighting over a comb, the White Sox and the Mariners taking each other on?
I'm always reminded, Richard, of the popular meme from the last couple of years. Whenever something bad happens and the other person says, "Hold my beer," it's whenever anyone talks about a statistic in baseball just now that's rotten. The White Sox, we're all over that. We're all over every statistic. So whatever you've got, we'll bring 10 of them to the party. We are terrible just now. So I'm watching. I sent a picture to the group chat. The White Sox are currently playing the Rangers. And it's actually nice to see one team called Rangers doing well just now, which Alan's quite pleased about. But the White Sox are poor. We knew the season was going this way. I think we've lost 10 in the trot. I spoke over the weekend with Dave a little bit. He was catching up ahead of our trip to Chicago later this year, and Dave's taken in a little bit of Chicago games just to get used to it. But the main news from us this week would be there's not really much point in familiarising yourself with the team because the team is about to be disbanded over the course of the next 2 or 3 days. Something that we might speak about this week or pick up on next week is the imminent trade deadline. The White Sox starting pitching, believe it or not, given the numbers that you just supplied, Richard, the White Sox starting pitching is the third best in baseball over the last few months. It is absolutely terrific, but they are not being supported at all by the boys with the bat. It's not a good time at all to be scoring runs. I think we're averaging something like 1.1 runs per game, which is pretty lousy, and it tells you even if your guy on the mound is having a fantastic night, he's just not getting that run support at all. So as I said, we're about to lose a lot of this pitching and take on board some young guns. But one of our main superstars, 88, Luis Robert, who I've spoke about over the last couple of years, I did hear a little rumour today that he might be making his way to Seattle. So it's something you're in need of as a good hitter, and someone like Robert, he might not have the best stats this year, but a lot of people believe it's because he feels he's having to do it all by himself. And in a more accomplished team, there's more chance for him to flourish somewhere in Seattle as opposed to in Chicago. So I'm not sure if you've came across that rumor at all.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is the phrase "more accomplished team" and fed up having to do it all by himself might also put him off making the move to the Pacific Northwest as well, because certainly at the moment that's exactly what he'd have to be doing. I mean, a terrific player, absolutely no doubt about that. I know you've been a real advocate and fan of his over the last few years, but Mariners have also been linked with likes of Vlad Guerrero Jr. and stuff like that, and I just can't see it happening. And to be honest, it would take more than one kind of superstar bat to turn the Mariners around. Their problems are really quite systemic. They are. I've not checked it today, but previously they are like first or second, certainly for pitching, for ERA, for keeping that low in the whole of the Major League Baseball. But they were the worst for runs scored. You know, they really are the most lopsided team. And I know it's a similar situation in Chicago as well. But I guess the difference is Chicago didn't fool out everyone at some point in the season. Chicago didn't run away with a 10-game lead at the top of the division before suddenly discovering that they couldn't play very good baseball. Whereas I think looking back over this season, I suspect the miracle will be of how the Mariners ever got themselves into that position in the first place. So yeah, the likes of Robbie, I'd be absolutely delighted with. I just can't see it, and I also can't see just one kind of superstar trade or even a couple of them doing it. I mean, the Mariners, like the White Sox, are freshening things up. Like the Ty Francis departed. There's some more moves there as well. But also the injuries couldn't have come at a worse time as well. And they're going to have to find out why the good hitters hit badly for Seattle, because it's now season after season, and it's clearly something more than meets the eye. So yeah, it would certainly take him and delighted to have him, but I think it's probably unlikely for us, and for us that's an unfortunate thing. What's the kind of the goal, if you like, for the White Sox? Then you mentioned this going a real transition point. Would you like to see just some flickers of hope for the rest of the season? Is that what your thoughts are?
Well, do you know, Richard, it's the pitching really has been terrific this year, and not only that, we're estimated to lose another couple of guys in the pitching front, and the guys that have done pretty well at the plate. And again, it's deemed that they're in a poor team just now. They're not getting much support from their teammates. Again, injuries are out there, but we are scheduled to lose a lot of guys in the next couple of days. But the guys that we will hold on to and the current crop of pitching talent we've got in the minors is terrific. So the thought process is, if we can add some bats, which again we don't even have at minor league level, if we can add bats throughout the organisation, next year might be too soon, which ironically is the 125th anniversary of the club. But if we can add some batters in there across the board, guys for now and guys for the future, then the feeling is that we really are starting to build a good farm system as an organisation, as a baseball club. So I think this season, again, it's completely gone. Next season is more about, can we get some green shoots? Who knows, there might even be a surprise in there. But it's quite clear that money is not on the table for the White Sox to spend just now, it's a shame, because I think everything about the fan base tells me that it screams out for a little bit of success. And we're not talking about World Series, just American League Central. There's not been a whole lot of pennants there for a club of the White Sox size in the last few decades. So you're just looking for a little bit there to give fans something to hold on to. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like that. And it feels like year after year, it's a rebuild. And it's hard. You know what it's like as a sports fan. You put so much of your life into a team, especially baseball fans, going along for potentially 5-6 months at a time, night on night, not just once every 2 weeks, rocking up on a Saturday at 3 o'clock. These guys, it's a game every single day, and it must take a toll after a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Away from our own struggles, competing against each other for the greatest struggles, I think things are going a bit better over in Detroit, up there in Michigan. Alan, what's your views on the Tigers' recent performances?
Yeah, recent performances in the last month have been good. There's a solid winning record there. I think what's obvious the 3-4 years we've been doing this podcast is the Tigers are one of those teams who we've not challenged at all, but there's always been times where we've done pretty well and been quite successful. I'm not following every other team so closely, so I don't know if that's like a normal situation to happen. But from a Detroit Tigers perspective, you look at it and you have this. Is it false hope? Is it real hope? Is it a little bit of joy? Is 162 games over a 8-month season or whatever it is that a game that allows you a little bit of joy at some time, unless you're Dave Jr., of course. So it's it's good. The trade deadline Dave was talking about as well is interesting. I think I know Yorkshire Dave myself excited that we'll see hope to see Tarek Skubal in Chicago in August, but you wonder then about the trade deadline because he is the most valuable piece the Tigers have. He's a Cy Young contender. He's got a fantastic winning record this year. And as we get into more and more into baseball, you then realize, you used to sort of think, teams that are competing, why do they make such a big push for one pitcher? But effectively what they're saying is Skubal would guarantee us getting into the playoffs, and you could play him in every round of the playoffs, and you're probably not guaranteeing a win, but you're getting pretty close to it. So you then have him in your rotation for a 7-game World Series, and you've potentially got a guy who's winning one game. So it's quite a powerful situation to have that. But the word on the street now is that he is unlikely to be traded. A lot of the Tigers fans were coming from a perspective was, if you trade him, you're effectively saying, yeah, we're not even in a rebuild. We're starting from scratch. We're not looking to be successful. What's the point of keeping the best guy, one of the best guys in the game? You would like to think that's what the management are thinking. Detroit, I think there's possibly another situation that, in effect, you've got 3 teams maybe looking at a guy like Skubal and thinking, can we get him on the rotation? And they possibly don't have the pieces to trade. It's not like when we're watching football and somebody comes along and says, star player, here £25 million, let's sign him up and have him. The Tigers are saying, what 3-4 pieces of our jigsaw can you come to us with? There must be discussions taking place, but perhaps those discussions aren't being that successful. So it looks like the Tigers might trade Jack Flaherty, another pitcher who's having a good season, but possibly would not be seen in the same sort of way. So yeah, it's a long journey, this rebuild. It's we're not seeing a challenge yet. We've got supposedly a top coach there in AJ Hinch, just not getting close to put over the line. We have, to give you the stats, when I say about the last month, the Tigers have had 9 losses more than wins this season. I think they were 39-47. They have got to 49-50. So pretty impressive run there, 10-3. They've just beaten Cleveland as we speak, a 3-0 win. So it held from a bullpen night. We're now 51-53. So there's something good there. It's still a losing record. It's not going to get them out to the AL Central and into the playoffs. Yeah. Tigers, is that flattering to deceive? Is there a lot of pieces there? Is the question mark over the management? Is that part of the reason it's not happening? Who knows? Who knows? We'll keep going. Detroit v everyone, and let's see what happens next.
That seems very fair, Alan, and thanks for that update on the Tigers. Moving across to the Red Sox, our Yorkshire Dave, it's a really, in some ways, a very interesting season for you guys, and you're about to go into a really, really important series as well, because you're a few games behind to those damn Yankees, but you've got a chance coming up to maybe close that gap in a series against the Yankees.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I think they played them in 2 3 game series already, and I think they won them both 2-1. So that, things can change pretty quickly in baseball. And just prior to the All-Star break, and the All-Star game, Boston were doing extremely well. They were at 11. Their best record they got to was 11 wins over 500, which put them actually 2 wins above the third wild card spot, and we're talking about even chasing the Yankees and the Orioles for top spot in the division. Incredibly, after the start they both had, there were only 4.5 games off the top spot. Now the All-Star break, I don't know if that's had anything to do with it, but they've had a bit of a hiccup since then. Right enough, they went straight into a 3 game series against the Dodgers in Los Angeles and was swept there, and they've just lost the series 2-1 in Colorado, including last night's defeat. 7 runs for the Red Sox, 20 runs for the Rockies. So yeah, let's call it a hiccup. We're now 7 games above 500, so only 1 game off the wild card spot, and still only 6.5 games off the top spot. I'm not really looking at the winning the division, but as an organization, they've made 2 fantastic announcements recently. They have committed themselves to be a buying team, whether that means they'll be going for, the trade deadline, whether that means they'll be going for the top players, probably not, but they're going to try and improve the team so that they will stay in contention for the playoffs. And also, more importantly, for this season and the future, it sends out a fantastic message, is that they've secured Alex Cora, whose contract was coming up at the end of this year. They've just signed him to a 3-year extension, which is absolutely massive. When I think every episode I say, we've never played the game, haven't we, baseball, but we know a bit about it. And I think you can spot a good manager and a good coach. And, I think I've said before that he clearly is a fantastic coach, doing what he's done with the roster, especially this season. He won the World Series with the Red Sox in 2018 in either his first or second year as manager, and that went with his win as a player with the Red Sox in 2007. He loves Boston, and he clearly has wanted to stay there. Now, I've said before, I listened to the podcast, and they were adamant that he was gone. There was no way he was staying. So this is a huge shot in the arm for the organization, and it also means that the organization and the owners have to be serious about, to get him to agree to sign a 3-year deal. He must be happy that they are going to put their hand in the pocket and going to give him the tools that he needs to get them, because let's face it, Boston, until the last couple of years have been a big market team, if not one of the biggest up there. If a big player comes up for, then they're in contention for him. But that's not been the case in the last 2 or 3 seasons. So, I think we'll see a return to them, being in contention for the big players and also for honors. Yeah, really. And also it fits in with there been I think I said right at the start of this year's podcast that there is a film crew in filming there's going to be a Netflix series which will be shown after the season is over. So the film crew's in there filming the series. So there's a lot of thrills and spills already for them, and we just as Red Sox fans hope that it's going to be a nice happy ending. At least gets to the playoffs, and then once you're in it, aren't you? And anything can happen if they add to. I think we've said before that they could do with a right-handed batter. I didn't realize actually that they almost signed Teoscar Hernandez, who won the home run derby the other week, and he's apparently he had a 2-year contract offer from Boston. That was his preferred option, but they weren't offering him enough money, and Los Angeles Dodgers came in with a 1-year contract, but a much better financial option, and he took that, and wow, that was a near miss. You can imagine him as the DH or in the lineup for the Red Sox would make quite a big difference. But on the other side, a lot of good young players have come through, so it might, that might not have happened in the same way had these signs. So, I'm very, very happy with the situation. They just need to bounce back against the Yankees. If it could, is it a 4-game series? I think, sort of. Yeah, I'd take 3-1 win right now.
And of course, right after that, you've got the Mariners as well. So that should be a chance to continue padding out the win column if current form's anything to go by as well. But I think you're totally right. I think that Cora extension could really be a shot in the arm, as you say, for the whole organisation. And I think you make a good point that he wouldn't have signed that without the assurances for the kind of wider direction and ambition of the franchise as well. So potentially an exciting moment, I think, for the Red Sox. And excitement and hope in Boston, not so much for the Mariners. And Teoscar Hernandez again, another guy that hits brilliantly everywhere, apart from when he's in a Mariners uniform. And it is dispiriting to see a number of guys that have prospered once they've left Washington. But there you go. But I actually was watching the Mariners the other night in another heartbreaking defeat to the Angels, and they had 2 errors, and they also managed a bases-loaded walk all in the 1 innings. And it got me thinking as I watched this comical baseball, how I know we like thinking about football, soccer, our game, and the comparisons and the differences with baseball. But I wonder if errors could be the kind of statistic that would have value in the world of football as well. And maybe when you're going to buy a defender in particular, knowing a guy got prone to errors could be a useful stat to look out. So what do we think?
I'll kick off. I had a look, and you kind of wonder. I think baseball is pretty much the only sport that has an official, stat for errors. It's I think we mentioned this before, that it's actually in the scoreline, isn't it? Runs, hits, and errors. And so why does baseball have this in the first place? And I haven't really looked into this hugely, but I was thinking about it earlier, and it's probably because of their influence on pitching stats. If you think about it, the big pitching stat, not just for pitchers, it's for teams as well, is earned runs. So if a pitcher doesn't get an out because of an error, and the run is scored because of a fielding error, then that would skew the stats in a way that didn't make the stats hungry baseball writers happy. So I think that's kind of why that came in the first place, because if you think I'm going from memory, but I think the definition of an error is it will only be called an error if it was a play that should have been made with normal effort. So we're not talking about someone diving at full length and just missing a catch, and that goes down as an error. I think we try, my experience is in a similar game is cricket. And I think if you go back to when I was growing up, 60s, you would get players who, especially in the old gentleman versus players, they wouldn't dive for a ball. They wouldn't get their uniform dirty by, it's a totally different sort of mindset. And also, although stats are important in cricket and the numbers, they do sort of twirl around numbers like a sommelier or a wine taster the same way they do in baseball. It doesn't, one sort of error doesn't. Certainly, you talk about an unlucky cricket bowler if there's a couple of drop catches in the slips which should have given him wickets. But in terms of runs, there's so many runs scored in a game. Yeah, a fielding error might cost him a run or a boundary, but it doesn't quite have the same effect. So that's sort of my take on why errors exist in the first place in baseball as a stat.
No, that's a good explanation. Thanks for that. Alan?
Yeah, I think Dave probably hit the nail on the head. I looked on it, I was thinking about it a slightly different perspective in that I know you can argue this in both sports, but when you look at football, you have your back four, your back five, whatever you're going to have, and they're fullback, centre back, whatever. They're also contributing to the game in so many other ways. You have your batting and your other stats and your catch stats and what have you, but there's something. It's a more dynamic game, football. That your centre back makes a mistake, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee a score. Whereas I think as a general rule, if the errors you're talking about in baseball, if an error is made, then somebody is probably then going to get a base hit. Football flows, as you're saying there, Dave. You will get the base hit from the error there, but the centre back might not win a header. He might not make the good tackle. It doesn't guarantee the striker or whoever then has the ball is actually going to score. It's a great subject because I think one of the problems with football is we would then discuss what is and isn't. Did he make a mistake there by not winning the header? And maybe because it doesn't necessarily lead to a score, it's easier then not to think about it in that way as well. So I would I wonder what scouting staff do. I wonder what a scout is looking for when he's then looking for a new left back or a new centre back to come into the team. Is he looking at all the positive attributes? They must have some awareness of the mistakes these guys are making. But it's a good discussion.
Dave Jr.
My favourite thing about errors, Richard, is if people that aren't used to baseball think that errors is a real nth degree type of statistic, which we all know is fantastic. It opens out the story of a game. I've sat with Dave as he's scored games, which in itself is fantastic to watch. But if you think about errors telling the story of a game or part of a story, if you think that's overkill, bear in mind the two gentlemen who touch the ball the most for the defensive side, they're not included really in errors. They've got their own categories. Pitchers when you're looking at wild pitches or pass balls, and catchers when the catcher, I know not for all throws, but if you're the catcher and the ball is thrown to second base to try and get a runner out, if they don't get them or if the ball goes slightly wide, that's still not classed as an error. Those are all elsewhere into more categories where you can take pitching into real nth an nth squared degree. You can move all these things on further. So when you're looking at errors, I think it's telling the tale of outfield players in the main. Your infield, your outfield, before you can even get into the whole dynamic of that relationship between a pitcher and a catcher.
I think that's a really brilliant point, Dave Jr. One I hadn't previously considered as well. And I guess, there's a bit there about errors I mean, errors are subjective, as you say, even in baseball. Somebody might take a slightly different view of what's an error or what's not. And I guess in football, it would be even more so. Alan mentioned, like maybe a defender misses a header. But what about the midfielder that hasn't tracked his runner? And that runner goes and sets up a goal as well. So I guess, yeah, if you're going to look at it in a football context, I think there'd have to be maybe more obvious potentially. And I think you may well have seen it, but there was a Partick Thistle, a team that often produces comedy, an own goal for the ages. They had against Clyde, which was once a derby of some note in Glasgow. Certainly that was a textbook error, a really fantastic own goal. But yeah, maybe it's that. So maybe it's an error in football, because I think we all know that football, there is far more data and analytics. In some way, I think this has almost been the sabermetrics era of football now. You get your XGs for goals for teams, but on an individual basis, I think there's a lot more analysis goes into evaluating what makes a good player, which makes it all the more amazing when Celtic sign so many dumplings, or other teams do the same as well. But yeah, I think there is something about footballers, because I'm thinking particularly, you mentioned there, Alan and Dave Junior's favourites, for example, one of their kind of stalwart players, or kind of Hall of Fame guy of the last 10 years, would be a really interesting case point, because he might have a fairly high error rate, but contribute so much in the offensive side of things and the attacking side of things in a football sense. So I guess he's quite an interesting example. And that's James, for those who don't know, that's James Tavernier we're talking about here. So yeah, I think it is an interesting one, but possibly errors, to be relevant and meaningful in football, there need to be a different kind of way of thinking of them and looking at them, I think. Well, while our baseball teams might be causing us no end of heartache at the moment, we can at least take comfort that the countdown to Chicago is on for the Highland Bullpen. 4 weeks from today, as we record this episode, we will be touching down in the Windy City, ready to take in some Major League Baseball action live. Really, obviously, all very much looking forward to it. But it is a long way from where we sit to the great city of Chicago, and we'd be delighted to get any recommendations, advice, or anything from our listeners out there as well. And any subjects in particular, any guidance in particular we'd like to get, do we think, guys?
I've got a few things up my sleeve just now, Richard. But again, there's nothing that can't be moved around if we feel that we're given a hidden gem or something that's deemed absolutely worthwhile to go and do. So again, it's going to be really baseball heavy over those 4 or 5 days. For me, I mean, we can do the baseball stuff, the obvious baseball stuff ourselves. But if anyone's got any recommendations about, here's a little hidden gem that's related to baseball, that if you're a baseball fan, you need to go and see this. It could be some sort of independent museum or a little bar somewhere. Then we're absolutely open to hearing these suggestions.
Not that we'd normally frequent such places as bars, of course, but that's an intriguing suggestion, is it not, Yorkshire Dave?
Yeah, I need to look out my stuff from I think it was either 1999 or 2000 when I was asked last. So it's over 20 years ago, but take it from me, there's some good watering holes in the fantastic city of Chicago. We'll definitely seek them out. Don't worry about that. But yeah, 4 weeks today, that's amazing. Oh gosh, yeah, looking forward to it big time.
Absolutely. No, it will be fantastic as well. And it will be a baseball packed trip. But if there are any suggestions about things, there's obviously so much to see in Chicago, we won't be able to do the half of it. But if there are any things people think we should definitely prioritise.
Oh, do you know what? I did see something today, just one of my millions of emails that come my way, solicited or unsolicited. And I'm pretty sure, the Cracker Jacks, which is mentioned in our
take me out.
theme song. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were invented in Chicago, something over 100 years ago. That's where they started off, and there may be something in the Chicago Museum about them. So yeah, I don't know about trying them out with my fillings and my teeth, but yeah, it's a big part of baseball, isn't it? And apparently when that song came out, I don't think the owners knew about it, and the sales just went through the roof because of that. Was it buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks, something like that.
That's
So
the one.
yeah, so in between beers and hot dogs, maybe we'll have some Cracker Jacks in Chicago as well.
Oh, that sounds great. And the guys that wrote that had never been to a baseball game in their lives.
Really?
Yeah. So it's yeah. Obviously somehow managed to capture the spirit of it. But peanuts and Cracker Jacks down that 7th-inning stretch sounds like exactly what we should be doing. Does that sound like a plan to you, Alan?
Yeah, no, that's good. I probably shouldn't swear on the podcast as well, but is is Chicago with a Wrigley Field the home of one of the great gum traditions of baseball then as well?
Certainly the Wrigley Empire. That's certainly
Yeah.
the fellas behind the name and their owners for many, many years, I think. Dave Jr.
There's something actually that you guys could help me out with, or if there are any Chicagoans listening. There is a drink I hear which is native to Chicago. I'm going to use Iron Brew as an example, that it's something that's it's ingrained into the culture. From everything that I've read, so it's called Malort, Malort, and everything that I come across online links it to Chicago and being it's something that people in Chicago drink. Now, I don't know if it's basically ditch water or if it's a soft drink or if there's something more to it, but it's worth us exploring, I think. Malort, so the O has an umlaut over it, so the two dots. But it's something I keep hearing about in podcasts or seeing on Twitter. X. So it's worth perhaps exploring that. I'm not sure if it may be like the little Dutch gin that we tried a few times. Like, is it Genevieve?
Yeah.
Not the same, but just something very distinct to that particular region. Let's hope it tastes a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Well, I think basically if it's there, we will drink it. So yeah, that definitely sounds like it's worth exploring there. I'm not quite sure about the frankly kind of sacrilegious comparison with Iron Brew. Dave Jr. Iron Brew obviously being a truly fantastic cultural icon of Scotland. But no, absolutely, those are the kind of things we can look forward to. 4 weeks today when we touch down for the Highland Bullpen and Tour in Chicago. Alan?
If they distill it, we will come.
Absolutely. I like it. We should get t-shirts. No, absolutely. That should be a fantastic trip as well. So we've got that to look forward to, and I'm sure it'll be a real celebration. It's been somewhat of a celebratory week for San Diego and for San Diego sports because the Open Championship in Royal Troon in Scotland on Sunday there, Xander Schauffele, a proud native of San Diego, claimed the Open Championship, which I'm pretty sure will be golf's oldest major, I'm sure, in fantastic circumstances, defying the wind, the rain and the elements of a Scottish July to claim that crown, and with a fantastic performance. Now, Xander's actually a San Diego native. He threw out a first pitch in a Padres game last year. Big fan of the Padres. And he would have been very happy today because I think, Dave Jr., it was another historic day for San Diego.
It was. So the second no-hitter of the season took place minutes before we came online today. So there was a White Sox hitter, very popular with the White Sox fan base. I think he made an all-star appearance last year, Dylan Cease. And he made the move last year to across to San Diego and threw his first ever no-hitter, and it was only the second in the Padres history. I'm trying to remember the guy's name last year. Is it Snell, perhaps? It rings a bell. He threw that last year, and given that particular franchise has been around for, I think, again, I might be going back a little bit, 40, 50 years. But Dylan Cease this afternoon, and from what I can see, 113 pitches took the Washington Nationals out the game. So again, it's a rare feat. We've spoken about it a few times on the podcast, but they are something to be recognised and something to be admired. I have seen a quick clip of just that wonderful moment that you see at every no-hitter or perfect game. That quick embrace between the pitcher and the catcher. It's just that wonderful moment as the last out is recorded. So congratulations to Dylan.
Oh, fantastic as well. It is one of those moments, isn't it, where you can see as the game progresses and it gradually dawns on people what they could be watching. The whole team, you can see, wants to do it for the. I often wonder if it puts more pressure on them. Actually, we talked about errors earlier on. I think there have been some examples over the years of errors robbing pictures of no hitters as well. But yeah, no, a fantastic and one of those moments that baseball throws up, and definitely a fantastic achievement as well. So yeah, I think the Padres are having a decentish season. I think, but obviously, I think the Dodgers are quite a way ahead in that division. From memory, there are the Padres, Alan, one of these teams that you have either a soft spot for, or you're not so keen on, or you're fairly neutral on the Padres.
I'm fairly neutral. I think it's probably true of 90% of National League teams. I suppose we don't see them as often as the AL teams, who our teams are playing much more frequently. So tend not to come across them too often. I'm sure I recall Dave had some good questions about the Padres in the early days of the podcast. Sort of source of the name or the mascot, perhaps as well. But yeah, San Diego is not a place I'm familiar with, although I do have a friend from Stornoway bizarrely ended up living in San Diego, which will be a bit of a contrast, I reckon.
I think that was a weekly feature of Once, Alan, when we went into the Padres, where we explored each team in MLB with our four. Sorry, Richard, you were going to say?
No, I was going to say I'm sure they barely notice any difference in the climate between Stornoway and San Diego. I'm sure, Alan. I've always quite liked them. I'm sure it's they're the ones who do the big kind of mission bell, the big bell tolls when they get a home run as well. It's one of my favourite home run celebrations as well. But no, absolutely.
The video of Sander Schofler. Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, it's the swinging Friars, isn't it? I think I don't know quite what the connection is there, but yeah, they're one of the great players of all time. Tony Gwynn. I think he was a Padre all his life. I'm just trying to remember our friend in Edinburgh, the bagpipes and ball caps guy. I think he was a big fan of Tony Gwynn. So yeah, I don't think the Padres have done anybody any wrong, have they? So quite a likable team.
Yeah, I would say so. I think Gwynn's regarded as one of the greatest ever hitters, isn't he? And as you say, a kind of lifelong Padre as well. I'll be totally honest, my knowledge of the city of San Diego largely comes from the Anchorman movies, so I'm prepared to accept that might not be a documentary style representation of the daily events in San Diego, but they are some of my favourite movies as well. So yes, from the.
I was wondering about David talked about swinging friars. I was then thinking of the monks down at the Buckfast Abbey who also contribute to the distilling industry in the UK as well, and whether that's some of the swinging friars have some of that in San Diego when we get there.
No, absolutely. That's a somewhat different type. We talked about Chicago's own kind of special drinks and stuff like that, and Buckfast is a somewhat. I'm actually not going to say any more, because one thing you probably don't know about Buckfast is they are famously litigious. You don't mess with the monks if you don't want to get sued. So I'll say no more on that topic there, Alan. But yes, no, absolutely. So
there's Anders Sofley thing as well. You can find his first pitch on YouTube, on the MLB YouTube. He throws it from the mound to the home plate. He was a thoroughly deserved champion, I would say. Delighted to see you making another TV appearance at the Open as well, outside the open arms, Richard. So well done on that. I was surprised that I would have seen you there, but Saturday was a pretty rough day at the Open for watching as well, I guess.
No, absolutely. Well, certainly having the ultimate face for radio, Alan, I'm always very surprised to be making appearances on the screen. But it was fantastic to be at the Open, and it shows, Alan, you're by quite a distance our most knowledgeable and skilled golf proponent among the bullpen here, so you'll know more about it. But I genuinely, having been there on the Thursday, I genuinely didn't think an American was going to win it. I assumed that the conditions were just so abysmal that actually it would be, something suited more to the British or other Europeans, or perhaps more used to. But I think that just makes Schauffele's achievement all the greater.
Yeah, Troon's an interesting venue because I think something like the last 8 or 9 opens at Troon. Henrik Stenson, when he won in 2016, is the only non-American to have won there. So for some reason, they do seem to have a good record there. And yeah, they're all tough courses. The weather, I think the weather is one of the great things about the Open as well. I know it engendered a lot of debate this year as well, but it added to a fantastic championship and much more than hit it down as far down as you can, and then you're playing target golf into the green. It doesn't happen like that on the Open venues. So yeah, fantastic. He's a great golfer. He was a guy who struggled to win, and he was called out for it a lot, and then he suddenly gets himself over the line, and yeah, he doesn't stop winning. Two majors in 1 year. There's not many people have done that.
Yeah, and I believe that's the first time in I think more than 40 years that Americans have held all 4 of golf's majors as well. And I think it was Tom Watson at Royal Troon potentially back the year where it was last achieved as well, Alan. So yeah, definitely
would have been, yeah.
Definitely a very impressive achievement. And obviously between the heroics of San Diego's top golfer and the heroics on the mound just a few short hours ago of the Padres' Dylan Cease, it's been a memorable day and another memorable episode of the Highland Bullpen.